Santa and the Forgotten Garden, a Victorian Christmas tale. On a quiet Christmas Eve, when the snow blanketed the world in silence, Santa Claus found himself drawn to an unusual place. His sleigh, normally guided with perfect precision, drifted toward a dim, overgrown Victorian garden on the outskirts of a forgotten village. Its iron gates creaked against the winter wind, and the path beyond was hidden under years of snow and neglect. Santa stepped through the gates, his boots crunching softly on the frozen ground. The air was heavy with stillness, as though the garden itself was holding its breath.
Ah, a place once full of life and joy. What's happened here?
The garden stretched out before him, a sad and tangled shadow of its former self. Broken statues leaned precariously, their faces worn and weathered. Thorny vines wound tightly around the crumbling stone fountains, and the rusted remains of a sundial sat at the heart of it all, half buried in snow. Santa approached the sundial, brushing the snow from its face. Beneath the rust and frost, an inscription glimmered faintly. "Where the light is lost, hope can grow."
A curious message, but how does one bring hope to a place so forgotten?
Santa waved his hand, summoning a spell of renewal. Warmth flowed through the air as the snow melted, and for a brief moment the garden seemed to stir. The vines loosened their grip, and statues glowed faintly, but just as quickly the thorns returned, thicker and sharper than before, twisting over the paths and reclaiming the space. The garden seemed colder, darker, and more foreboding than ever.
Magic won't mend what's broken here. This is no ordinary decay. It's a grief that runs deeper.
Determined to uncover the truth, Santa explored the garden. He found broken bird baths, shattered lanterns, and a weathered journal tucked into the hollow of a tree. Its pages were brittle but legible, telling the story of a family who once cherished this garden. They had filled it with light, flowers, and laughter. It was their sanctuary, a place of hope for all who had visited. But after a great loss, a child who had passed too soon, the family left, and the garden withered without their care.
Forgotten by those who once loved it. No wonder it feels so lost.
As Santa walked, his sharp eyes noticed a hidden gate tangled in vines. He cleared the way, revealing a rusted lock. Reaching into the folds of his coat, he produced a small, weathered key he had found earlier in the garden. The lock clicked open, and Santa stepped into the alcove. At its center stood a stone pedestal, atop which rested an empty planter. Inscribed on the pedestal were the words, "Plant the seed of hope."
An empty planter, but no seed to plant.
Santa searched the alcove for any sign of a seed, but found nothing. He paced the space, his frustration growing.
How can I restore this place if the very thing that's needed is gone?
He sat beside the planter, his head bowed as the wind rustled through the broken gates. The garden seemed to grow darker, as though giving up entirely. Santa sighed, his gloved hands resting on the stone.
Hope doesn't come from nothing. It needs a spark. Something to remind this place of what it once was.
His hand drifted into his pocket, where he felt a small, familiar shape. Pulling it out, he revealed a delicate ornament, shaped like a star and glowing faintly with golden light. Santa held it up, the soft glow reflecting in his own eyes.
This might just do.
He placed the star carefully into the planter and stepped back. At first, nothing happened. But then, the light began to spread, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The thorns receded, retreating into the shadows as the statues stood tall once more. The fountains bubbled with crystal-clear water, their music filling the air, and tiny snowdrops bloomed along the paths, their delicate petals shining in the golden glow. The garden transformed, not into what it had been, but into something new. Its beauty was simpler, quieter, but filled with life and warmth.
Where the light is lost, hope can grow. A little care was all that was needed.
Santa placed the journal back in its tree hollow, adding a final note to its pages. Even in darkness, hope can bloom again. He stepped through the garden's gates, pausing to look back. The once dark space now glowed softly, its light spilling into the snowy night. The garden no longer felt abandoned. It felt alive, ready to welcome those who might need its peace. As Santa climbed into his sleigh, he glanced back once more, the golden light still visible through the swirling snow.
Even the most forgotten places can bloom again.
The sleigh rose into the starry sky, Santa's laughter echoing across the night. Below, the restored garden stood as a beacon of hope, its warmth reaching out to a world that often needed reminding. Where the light is lost, hope can always grow.
Merry Christmas, you beautiful garden! Now grow! Grow and blossom!